today we're going to talk about The Picture in the House by H.P. Lovecraft. I think this is story 15 in the order in which I'm reading them. And compared with a couple of the other previous ones which I had issues with, I simply enjoy this one immensely. I like that it talks about how some people think scary things are in Rhine castles or, and down in Paris or things like that, but that it's actually the backwoods of New England that holds some of the truly scary things. And having grown up in New England, and having a father who was a genealogist, and we used to go tromping around looking for old stone walls and foundations and so on, I definitely feel this. The history, it's only a couple centuries compared with some of the much longer history in Europe, but it is still often a scary and rustic kind of feeling in New England that isn't available in many other parts of the world. And it talks about the little unpainted wooden houses that are very remote, and how they are sort of abandoned and squatting there, and there's overgrowth and other things. And certainly, these exist. I've seen them in Ireland and Italy and many other places. But, maybe it's because I grew up in New England, but there's just something about the New England version of the houses that tends to be scary. And maybe it's because there are things that are known to me in the sense that I know people who live in very old, 1600s or 1700 houses, and to see one of them abandoned and have it be full of creaking stairs and that sort of thing feels natural and part of my real world, in comparison with trying to say that someone's house from 1100 in Ireland is still there, because in most cases those houses would have fallen apart and still don't exist. So we've got him saying that these houses in New England are old enough to still be scary, but also intact, where, if a house got much older than that, it probably would have fallen apart and just tumbled down. And also that there are these places in New England that are far enough away from civilization that they could be abandoned like that. The houses that I saw like that in Ireland, they were still somewhere that people knew about, because Ireland, in comparison, is relatively small. And people know where all the different houses are, even if they know that they're abandoned. So in this story, it's 1896, so earlier than his current day when he was writing. So it was set in the past, and pouring rain, and he sets it in Miskatonic Valley. So it's in New England, probably Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, somewhere. But he's invented now an imaginary valley, because we have a bunch of valleys around here. And the shortest cut to Arkham, which he hasn't really mentioned up until now, but then becomes a part of this whole world. So this is fun to see all of this starting to get developed, because it's not like he planned out this whole gigantic plan for his future writing, but he's starting to come up with ideas, and then he develops them in future stories to see where they go. So he's bicycling around an abandoned road in this rural part of, we'll say, Massachusetts. And he's trying to get to a local little village down in this valley, and pouring rain starts to happen, and he has to take shelter somewhere. So he sees this ancient remnant of a house that is probably from the 1600s. We still have a couple houses around here from the 1600s, and it looks like it's falling apart. And he has found houses like this in his genealogical researches, which, again, this is part of what makes this story so intriguing to me, because I did this kind of thing, and I suppose I still do this kind of stuff. He thought the house was abandoned. It's overgrown with weeds, but he gets the sense that maybe there is someone still living here, and he tries knocking, but he doesn't get any response, so he just walks in. All right, so this is where I start to suspend disbelief, because even if I was in an abandoned place, if I was knocking on the door and no one answered, I would not just go in, because you never know if some sort of a gun-toting, knife-toting person is in there and is going to kill you because they don't want you in their house. So it's a little iffy to me that he just decides to walk in just because it's raining. I mean, he's not going to melt in the rain. He could just trudge on and get to the city. But he doesn't. He goes inside. There's a hateful odor in the house. The plaster is falling down. He brings the bike in. What in the world? You leave your bike outside on the porch or whatever. You do not bring your bike into this abandoned house, even if it's abandoned. But that's what he does. And he finds all sorts of books and papers in there, and everything looks like it's around the Revolutionary War date. So it's full of antique stuff. Yet another reason I have a bunch of friends who like to go into old houses and take pictures of them, and I am always surprised that they do that because the floors could cave in. These generally have basements, and you could be walking across the floor and completely cave into the bottom. This guy doesn't go upstairs, but if you went up the stairs could collapse. I mean, even just walking in the house, the upper floor could collapse down on your head. So he's taking his life into his own hands by wandering around here if this house really is in this kind of antique state. But instead he goes roaming around and looking and sees all sorts of interesting things in here that would be a collector's paradise. And he talks repeatedly about things that he feared or loathed, or it's gross or disgusting or so on because it's old and moldy, which is another reason I would not go in here in the pouring rain, because undoubtedly the place is full of mold and decay and things that are going to kill you if you breathe them in. But he finds a book that is a really cool book from 1598, and it's about the Congo region. Well, this goes back to the previous story where he is obsessed with people from the Congo region and how they infect our blood and our thoughts and so on. And he's intrigued that they have Negroes with white skins and Caucasian features. He's just so obsessed with the idea that Negroes and white people might somehow meld and taint our bloodline. So, all right. I thought that I really liked this story, but I forgot about some of these details in here. I think, again, because I have gotten so used to Lovecraft just being this way, and discounting's the wrong word, but that it's a part of his worldview. And it's bad that I even forgot that he had these things in here. All right. And the plate that's open is about someone cannibalizing someone and cutting their body apart. And it disturbs him to see this body being cannibalized. So then he goes looking at other things. There's grotesque woodcuts, and then suddenly he hears sounds, and he realizes that someone else is in the house, and the tread is heavy, and he is concerned because it sounds like a big person that could threaten him. Which would be my thought, because I never would have gone in this house in the first place, because some rural New Englander would shoot me or attack me or just clunk me over the head, because that's what happens around here. So some old guy shows up who's white-bearded and ragged, and he is obsessed with, the main character is obsessed with how old and ruddy and poverty-stricken and unkempt he looks, and it's offensive, and that he's 6 feet tall and stout and powerful. So he's definitely a very threatening person. And the guy, the main character, is mostly upset that he's dirty and unkempt. So the guy, fortunately for the main character, seems very friendly, and he talks in a very exaggerated New England accent. Let's see. Catched in the rain be ye, glad ye was nigh the house, and had the sense to come right in. I calculate I was asleep, else I'd a heard you, as I ain't as young as I used to be, and I need a powerful sight of naps nowadays. Traveling fur? So he's talking in a fairly exaggerated accent, and that's okay, but Lovecraft could have just said he had a strong accent without trying to spell it out and making it hard for some people to read. I don't mind this kind of stuff, even though he goes on for a bit in it. You just sort of skim through it and get a sense of what's being said. So it becomes clear fairly quickly that this old guy is actually from the Revolutionary War, which is why he has all of this old stuff around him, and he's just been living here all alone all this time. And he doesn't even know how to read this book from Africa. He just likes the pictures in it. He likes to look at the pictures of people being cannibalized and such, which makes the main character a little concerned about what this guy is doing here. So it looks like in here we get the N word. It's just, there's iffy things in here about half monkeys and half men and so on, and they're in Africa, kind of like Indians. So this is, Lovecraft and his feelings about people who are not white Anglo-Saxon people. Right, we'll just skip over that part. And then the elderly man is obsessed with the cannibal plates and how it's so cool, looking at how people are being chopped up and how Africans can look like white men and all of their body parts hanging on the wall. Look at how they chopped off their body parts. And the main character realizes that he's in trouble. That this old person is still alive because he's been eating human beings, and the human beings are somehow keeping alive, and he just likes to chop up and eat humans. And we go on more about, oh, killing sheep wasn't as much fun because I'd rather chop up humans. And then some dripping starts to happen, and he realizes that it's blood dripping through the upstairs, that clearly someone has just been killed upstairs, and their blood is now dripping down and dripping onto the book. And he is going to be next. And then, in classic Lovecraft fashion, I suppose we should be happy that this whole story wasn't ruined, we'll say, by having some sort of a preface saying, I was able to escape from this house, and here's what happened while I was in the house. You know, we at least get to go through the main character's eyes and get down to the end of the story, not knowing what's going to happen. But then in the second to last paragraph, it says, the interruption to this whole thread of the cannibal was not produced by my fright, nor by the rapidly increasing storm amidst whose fury I was presented to open my eyes on a smoky solitude of blackened ruins. It was produced by a very simple, though very unusual, somewhat unusual happening. So we're told in the second to last paragraph that he opened his eyes on a smoky solitude of blackened ruins. So we know that the cannibal is no longer there, and that the main character lives, and that something unusual happens, and what happens was a lightning bolt came, a titanic thunderbolt of thunderbolts that blasted the accursed house of unutterable secrets. So the lightning bolt came and smashed the house, destroyed the house, brought oblivion to the main character's mind, and then he woke up and he was all alone. So the cannibal guy was either killed or managed to escape because of this lightning bolt. So Lovecraft couldn't manage to just let us read it and then tell us what happened. He had to tell us ahead of time that the guy lived and then tell us what happened, which, I don't know why he has to do that. Why does he have to take away from the moment and warn us up front that, someone's going to make it or someone's not going to make it or whatever he's going to do? So I enjoyed a lot of the description of this. I really like the sense that New England has haunted places that are of power just as powerful as ruined Rhine castles or forgotten cities in Asia or so on. It almost feels like Lovecraft's feeling like he has to make his case to people who think, oh, New England's not that scary, and he says, oh, no, really it is. These are things that you should be concerned about. And I like the descriptions of the Miskatonic Valley and the bicycle going up to the house and the abandoned house. At the same time, like I said, I can't imagine if I was in pouring rain that I would ever enter a house like this. One, because there could be a killer person in there who's defending his house and would happily kill you and be justified. And second, because the house itself, if it's going to be that old, I've seen plenty of houses of this era that you could fall through the floor, or the ceiling could fall down on you, or they're just so coated in mold that you could get really nasty diseases by just being in there and breathing it. So I don't know why he went into that house. And this whole African book full of cannibals and black people who look like they have white features, I mean, that aspect of it is very iffy. And half monkeys, half men, and the use of the N-word, which, even at the time, people knew was an inappropriate word, and Lovecraft just liked to use it anyway. So I like the storytelling, I like the setting, I like the cannibal situation, but I don't like that he tends to foreshadow, and I don't like, once again, that we've got the underlying, what will we say, the underlying twist of it being involving Africans who look like white men, and the darkness of the Africans being involved in the cannibals and killing each other kind of aspect to all of this. So let me know what your thoughts are of the picture in the house. I'd love to hear if you get some of the same images as I do from it. I do like that it refers to the Miskatonic Valley into Arkham, and that it's a starting point for future stories. So we will see what they have to bring to us.